Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's NAA iSeries webinar. I am Erin Shipps with the National Auctioneers Association, and I would like to thank you for joining us for today's newest iSeries installment. Through iSeries, the NAA shares free auction industry insights with NAA members and the general public.
Welcome to the webinar.
As the world's largest association dedicated to auction professionals, the NAA educates and represents the interests of thousands of auction professionals worldwide. Today's session on benefit auction law will be presented by TiWanna Kenney. TiWanna A. Kenney, TK, is the owner and driving force behind Astounding Auctions and Fundraising Strategies. She's the first African-American woman to earn the Benefit Auctioneer Specialist designation, which makes her an expert in fundraising auctions. She has served as a diversity speaker at the NAA Conference and Show and at the Texas Auctioneers Association Annual Convention, as well as served as a moderator at the NAA Benefit Auction Summit. She is also a frequent presenter at Association of Fundraising Professionals meetings across Texas. TK is a U.S. Army veteran with more than a decade of community relations and leadership experience. Operating with a sharp mix of altruism and charm, she believes everyone has the ability to make an impact in the world. She has assembled a top-notch team, equally determined to change lives. Driven by a genuine desire to increase philanthropy, she works diligently to see nonprofits win. Throughout her presentation, please note that you may take part in the conversation. Type and submit your questions at any time, and we will get to as many of them as we can during our brief Q&A period. After that, we will also ask you to please take part in a very short 3-question poll. With that, TK, thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Erin, and hello to everyone on the call today. I'm so excited to share with you more about benefit auction law and how we can make sure we cross the state lines in such a way that we're bringing pride to the industry. So let's go ahead and jump straight in. A little bit more about me. Erin gave a great overview, but I have been licensed since 2015. I'm currently licensed in Texas, Illinois, Washington State, and Pennsylvania. I'm also bonded in California, and I do cross state lines quite often. One of the biggest questions we want to talk about is why the law matters. When we're looking at what we do as professionals, it's so important that everything we do, we're bringing honor not just to ourselves, but our clients and overall to the auction industry. Whenever there's a time where we're doing a nonprofit organization's gala, if we're not representing ourselves and following the letter of the law, we always are exposing negative consequences to the nonprofit partners. It can result in donor distrust, in donors no longer supporting organizations. It can cause reputational risk if we're working with national organizations that may have multiple chapters throughout the United States. And of course, it also causes industry damage because auction professionals are just that, we're professionals. So we do have a burden of responsibility of being sure that everything we do represents, again, ourselves, our clients, and the industry as a whole. Some of the ways we do that is by making sure that we are following licensing requirements, that we're following the state laws, and that we as professionals, again, are giving our clients the absolute best advice and guidance in everything that they do. That can be from our consultation calls, from the items that we sell for our nonprofits, all the way through the follow-up and how we have our clients work with our donors in the back end. Many times we see nonprofit auctioneers specifically working multiple events a week and oftentimes in many states. When we're in those situations, we have to make sure that we are doing our absolute best to provide, again, the right advice to our clients. So the first thing that we must do as professionals is make sure we meet the licensing requirements. Many states have their own licensing requirements, but then it goes a step further oftentimes to include county licensing and city licenses as well. There are oftentimes business license requirements, state tax license requirements. Then there's the reciprocal licensing fund, escrow accounts that are also needed occasionally. So let's talk a little bit more about the state license requirements. You can find out if a state's requiring licensing by going to their website, the state professional bureaus. So in some places it may be the Professional Bureaus of Regulations. In Texas, it's the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulations. Or you can simply do a search for Texas auctioneer licensing requirements. There is a link here for your convenience to a website, which is on the Western College of Auctioneering site, that does give you nice overviews of all of the requirements of licensing throughout the United States. This is a great place to start, but I always recommend going a step further by looking in your state and local government resources. The best way to know you're in the right place is making sure that the website ends in .gov, so .gov, and then you know that you're in a site that is giving you the most current and up-to-date requirements. But I really do, again, love that Western College of Auctioneering site because they're great bits of information that you may not have thought about when you're applying for licenses. We also want to think about the fact that there are some places in the United States that don't require auctioneer licensing at all. So it may not be something that came to you top of mind to say, hey, I should look at getting a license, because your state may not require it. But you, again, you have the burden of responsibility to be sure that your clients are being represented by a professional who is maintaining the state standards. When looking at business license requirements, there may be some states that do not require an actual auctioneer license, but before you can operate a business in their state, they do require that you have a business license. A good example of that is Washington State and California. California requires a bond and a business license. Washington State, they require a business license, an auctioneer license, a sales tax license, a bond, and they also have county requirements as well. So you have to take those extra steps to look those details up. But if you're thinking about Washington or California, I just helped you out there with that bit of information. So just go and apply for your bond, and then you'll apply for your business license through the state of California. When it comes to reciprocal licensing, this can become a lot of fun because reciprocal licensing has different layers of the process, and they can save you time and money. But we'll dig into that a little bit more in just a few. So here are some of the fun parts of applications. So let's say you're thinking about getting licensed in Tennessee. You've gone to the website to see what those application requirements are, and you're wondering, why on earth is it asking me for some of these crazy requirements, such as a letter from an elected official? Why on earth must an elected official say that I'm a good person for me to get a license? A letter of good standing. Who is writing this letter of good standing, and why do I have to say that I'm in good standing? There's also requirements of surety bonds or insurance, criminal background checks, and again, that reciprocity coming in one more time. So the letters of elected officials, I've seen those come up in states like Massachusetts, where you're applying for your license and they want an elected official to say essentially that you are of good character. This is completely different from the letter of good standing, and for whatever reason, that's what the state may require. And we do, again, have that burden of responsibility of meeting those requirements. And sometimes doing something as simple as sending out a message on Facebook can help you get that letter that you need to meet that requirement. Letters of good standing often come into play when you are already licensed in another state and you're applying. So for instance, let's say that you were applying in Tennessee, but you were already licensed in Texas. They would say, let us see your letter of good standing from the state of Texas. Most times they do want these letters to come from the licensing bureau. So in Texas, that would be the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulations. They would have to send a letter directly to Tennessee stating that I am an auctioneer and in good standing, that my license is not suspended or has not been suspended. And if it has, they should then divulge into the further details pertaining to any issues that there may have been in licensing. Next up would be the surety bond or the insurance piece, which is also a lot of fun. I know we all are familiar with insurance because we maintain it in most of our daily lives with car insurance or health insurance, but surety bonds can sometimes be a little more squiggly because we're not quite sure and it's not something that we use every day. So there may be confusion about it. So let's talk about that a little bit more. A surety bond is a contract between three parties. There's a principal, which is the auctioneer, the surety, which is the company, and the obligee, and that's the entity that requires the bond. So that would be the state. Then the surety bond essentially financially guarantees to an obligee that the principal will act in accordance with the terms established by the bond. So whatever it is that the law states that you're going to act within the letter of the law, you're saying that you're going to do that whenever you take out that surety bond. And just to take that a little bit further, a surety bond's an agreement between the three parties. The company backs the bond and they provide a line of credit if the principal does not fulfill the obligations of said bond. So let's say that for some reason you sold something that should not have been sold at auction, or let's say on the other side that you operated in an auction and you were not able to show up because of illness or something to that extent, and you were to be sued or action was to be taken out. The bond will protect you from protect your client from harmful and unethical business practices, and it will protect you from having to come out of pocket immediately with those expenses. So if a customer were to file, let's say, a $3,000 claim against the owner of a $25,000 bond, the surety company would pay that bond and they will take care of it, but you will still have to reimburse that surety bond company. So it's peace of mind. It's usually a little bit less than insurance would be on a monthly basis, but it does protect, again, the client from harmful and unethical business practices. Sometimes there's also business or criminal background checks that are required. They may require fingerprints or you filling out information and submitting it to your state and local government. When you have to do those types of background checks, they may request that the results are sealed. If that's the request that they're making, then you would just ask that whomever is conducting your criminal background check, that they send that information directly over to the entity from where you're applying for your application. And then reciprocity, which again adds a different layer and may require you to pull out some documents you may not have seen in quite a while. So let's talk about the reciprocity. When you're requesting reciprocity, the first requirement is that you hold a license in a state that reciprocates with another. So for instance, Texas does reciprocate with Illinois. So if you hold a license in Illinois and Texas, you can get your license from both places, but you do have to do work. It does not mean that you're automatically licensed. The thing that makes reciprocity great is that it waives the education or time requirement. So you're no longer required to have to go to auction school again or have however many hours of education because they waive that. They also waive the time requirement. So let's say that there's a requirement that you work as an associate auctioneer for 6 months before you get a full-fledged license. If you are already licensed, it's 100% okay. You don't have to start back over in Illinois because of the reciprocity. Again, the reciprocity is not automatic. Just because you're licensed in Texas, it does not mean that you're licensed in Illinois or whatever other state there may be a reciprocal agreement with. You still have to do the application by reciprocity, no matter what. You also must pay any applicable fees and meet the other business requirements. So again, if that's a bond, a letter of good standing, criminal background check, or a letter from an elected official, you must meet those requirements in the process as well. And you also cannot work until the license is guaranteed by said state authority. It's just a step in the process, but trust me, stick with it and all will be okay and you'll have your license in no time. From reciprocity, we then talk about application efficiency. So the best way to get your application done efficiently would be first to call to understand the requirements. So if you're looking at getting a license in, let's say, Washington. So you call the state of Washington and have your application in front of you and make sure you know what questions you want to ask, because sometimes those phone calls can be quite lengthy and they'll keep you on hold for a while. And once you have a person on the phone, clarify any points in the application that you may have questions about. Once you've clarified that, if you can find out if there are any steps in the process that you can avoid. For instance, in Texas, part of the license requirement is that you have a comptroller sales tax number. But if you are not selling items for an estate, that's not required. So benefit auctioneers are not required to have a Texas comptroller account at all. So you can save yourself a lot of time by sending in a letter stating that you do not resell goods, you do not collect funds from clients, and that can help you skip that step. So when you're on the phone with those representatives, ask those questions and see how they may be able to help you save yourself some time. Then when you send your documents over, make sure you're tracking all your mail documents. Either send them FedEx, UPS, or Priority Mail, and use those tracking numbers to ensure that your intended recipient receives your documents. Checks are also great. because you can make sure that the check has cleared your account, which is usually a good indicator that the funds have been received. So once that check clears your account, you know that they've received your entire packet and that something's been done with it. It does not mean it's necessarily been processed. Money orders from financial institutions can also be verified. And I have to say, as a former banker, I think that money orders and cashier's checks provide you a different peace of mind than sending out your personal account information in the mail. And so after you do all of that, I would recommend you follow up in about 2 weeks to confirm receipt. Yes, you did make sure your check went through, and yes, you did make sure your money order went through, but it doesn't hurt. While you're on that call, make sure that you ask a few questions around the process, what the next steps are. And if they have taken your application in and done some sort of processing, are there any missing pieces that you may need to submit to help expedite the process? Additionally, this is so important. Be kind to those persons on the phone. They are not the ones who approve or deny your application. They're simply the people who do the processing. They take the phone calls, and they may have much more intricate roles than that, but your applications are actually going to be approved by either an auctioneer board or an auctioneer commission or whatever house that state has put them under. So try not to give them a lot of grief. And if you can make them your friend and have a great relationship with them, you now have a point of contact that can help you answer questions. You also have a point of contact that can help you along the process if there is something that needs to be corrected. So learn their names, get their emails, use your manners, say please and thank you. Really small things can help you go really far in getting that approved. And lastly, keep documents. Save a tree, don't print it, send it out to the cloud by scanning it in, and keep that information because you never know when you might need it again. So the next question will be, is licensing enough? Now that I've done this license, I'm good to go, right? I don't have to do anything else. But that's not right. There are still applicable state, county, and city laws that you may have to pay attention to. There's also gambling and games of chance that you need to be familiar with. What are the liquor and firearm laws in that area? What are you doing to protect yourself in your contract? Something, for instance, as simple as auctioneers reserve the right to refuse to sell an auction item which it determines is inappropriate for sale at charity auction or which it believes is prohibited by law from being sold at auction. You have a responsibility to yourself to protect yourself by making sure your contract is up to date and has blurbs in there that protect you in the event of what you're selling may come across as not being an item that should be sold. So tips for online searches as you're searching for this information. Beware of the internet attorneys. There's tons of people out there who have lots of information, but they may not be the authority. Watch out for those. Make sure that any site that you're searching on for official information ends in .gov. If you can find the information elsewhere, always look for it again on the .gov site. And if you can't find it there, use the resource of that friendly person that you reached out to for your application. And then make sure you're paying attention to benefit, charity, or fundraising auctions. All auctions are not created equally, and all requirements are not the same. So there may be something different required as a benefit, charity, or fundraising auctioneer, or there may be no requirements at all, which could be a best case scenario. So just be familiar with that part. Raffle laws. Let's talk a little bit about those. You may not be responsible necessarily for collection of the sales taxes or any taxes received from raffles, but you, however, are responsible for making sure that you're giving your client the right advice. The reason we become benefit auctioneer specialists is to take our game to another level where we're becoming more than the auctioneer, but we're also consultants. So you want to provide the right advice, especially to those smaller grassroots organizations that may not be aware of their responsibilities when it comes to raffles or gambling. That doesn't mean that, again, you have to be a walking encyclopedia of knowledge, but a quick search online can help you determine whether or not their lotteries are legal, gambling's legal, and raffles are legal. It can also help you tell your client that taxation requirements vary, but they should search or contact someone who is an authority on taxes to help with that. Sometimes when it comes to raffles, record retention matters. In Oregon, you're required to keep all of the documents from any raffle that you do. That includes the ticket stub of the winning raffle number. Sometimes state lottery and gambling commissions are good resources as well. They'll tell you everything you need to know, and they break it down in and out for any scenario that you can think of. Liquor sales and consumption can also be touchy points. In Texas, I believe the most scary organization in Texas is the TABC, which is Texas Alcohol and Beverage Commission. They are the watchdogs and they pay attention to everything. You want to be sure that you're helping your client out in the process by helping them be aware of social host liquor liability laws. That essentially means that if liquor is provided at no cost, your organization can be held responsible providing liquor to minors in a situation that results in injuries, or if for some reason someone were to get into an accident and they were able to sue that person, they could also take it a step further and take legal action against you as an organization. That's the dram shop law. So what does this mean for you? Absolutely nothing directly, but it takes you a step further in being an expert when you're able to provide your client the right advice and share with them how they can be impacted by liquor laws. So good to knows and ways to find out about this, again, would be to look at the Alcohol and Beverage Commission in your areas where you may be working. From there, firearms. They can be touchy subjects, but the code of the law and federal statutes governing auctioneers and the sale of firearms is 18 United States Code 923A, engaging in the business of dealing in firearms for auctioneers. You can sell a firearm at auction for charity. But there are many questions you want to ask, not just yourself, but also your client. Will the firearms be on site and how they'll be secured? And if you're not sure if you need a license, contact your local ATF office. They'll be able to help provide you the best advice regarding that topic. So a quick recap and resources for you. If you have questions about raffles, a great place to go as your first level resource will be here, www.raffleticketsoftware.com/Raffle Laws. A starting point for licensing requirements, again, is the www.auctionschools.com, and that's on our local auctioneer school website. Another tip is to keep all license documentation. So when you need to reapply, you're able to have that information handy. Stay up to date on your CEs to renew your license, and your CEs are continuing education hours. You'll want to do those every year or every 2 years, however your license is set up. And then if you ever need help, don't forget your NAA members. They are licensed in many states that you may want to work. Find someone on the National Auctioneers website, reach out to them and ask them what are some needs to know that you can help make your clients and yourself more successful in working in their arenas or in their area of specialties. So I want to say thank you. My contact information is here for you. If you have any questions, feel free to call, email, or text. And I thank you for joining us today and staying within the line of the law.
TK, thank you so much. We will now open the floor for questions. If you have not done so already, please submit your question and we will get to as many of them as possible. TK, our first question, we know you talked a little bit about sales tax. Is there anything else that benefit auctioneers need to consider because you're charging for services?
Some states do require that you pay taxes on funds earned in their states. Actually, most states do require that. So I would say look into whatever the tax laws are in that state and talk to your local accountant, because they'd be your best line of defense in this area, to discuss whether or not you need to file a state or local tax return based on the funds you've earned in those areas.
Okay, our next question. If you're not being paid for an auction, do you need to be licensed?
That is a question that would differ by state. Some states require any compensation, and that includes a meal, that includes sitting at a table, even a beverage, and they will consider that compensation. Some states do say no matter what, you're required to have a license whether you're paid or not. So I would look into that state by state and see what you find, and again, use those resources to contact them. The best case scenario, I would say, is just to stay within the law and get your license, because it can be something that prevents you from growing down the line if handled inappropriately.
Great, thank you, TK. Okay, everyone, that concludes the Q&A portion of today's event. Thank you to all of you who submitted questions, and we apologize if we did not get to yours. It is now time for you to give us your feedback on today's session. Please see the poll on your screen and answer the questions as they appear. We will move fairly quickly, so please answer as swiftly as you are able. Number 1, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score and 1 being the lowest, how would you rate today's iSeries presentation? And number 2, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being very likely and 1 being not at all, how likely are you to recommend iSeries to a friend? And finally, number 3, I plan to attend the Benefit Auction Summit. Thank you for taking part in the survey. Before we end today's session, we do have some updated information on upcoming NAA events. It's not too late to register for Conference and Show in New Orleans, July 9th through the 13th. The event kicks off with a masquerade welcome party, followed by first-class education and exciting events throughout. Find out more at conferenceandshow.com. You will also want to make plans to join us in Palm Springs, August 25th through the 27th for the Benefit Auction Summit. You can register for this and any of our other events at auctioneers.org/events. As we close, you will receive a link to today's session emailed by the end of this week. In addition, current NAA members can log in and access iSeries archives at auctioneers.org/iSeries. Your next iSeries webinar will be Wednesday, August 7th at 2 p.m. Central, and will explore traditional versus luxury real estate auctions, a session you won't want to miss. We will send specific information on that in the near future. Thank you again to TK for sharing her insight today, and thanks to all of you for taking part in NAA's iSeries. That concludes today's webinar. Have a great day.